Every new technology swears it'll make our work effortless, as though effort were a dirty word. Fewer keystrokes, fewer decisions, fewer moments where the human hand interrupts the machine's glide path. AI tools, autocomplete, algorithmic curation, and predictive analytics all carry the same promise. You don't have to think so hard. But is that a good thing? We're surrounded by an abundance of information, but we're starved for clarity. There's something radical in the act of refusing to be carried along with the tide, and that refusal is what I call manual mode. The insistence that certain forms of knowledge and creativity only emerge when you resist the frictionless path, when you make the deliberate choice to slow down, to take the reins, and to experience the world without letting it be mediated by algorithms. Monks who copied manuscripts by hand were cultivating a relationship with the text. Marginalia, corrections, and eliminations were all forms of engagement. The labor of transcription was a form of thought. When Gutenberg's press appeared, the ability to reproduce texts exploded. Something was gained, cheap dissemination, literacy at scale, but something was also lost, the intimate line-by-line encounter with the written word and the ideas it described. Manual mode is a way of reclaiming that tactile awareness. It's pausing to think about how often we drift into autopilot. If monks argued with their manuscripts in the margins, can't we argue with our own ideas instead of just giving in to predictive text? Friction has always been an engine of creation. Painters talk about happy accidents, strokes that depart from intention and generate new possibilities. Writers talk about the way constraint, a sonnet, a deadline, a word limit, paradoxically expands their imagination. The creative process thrives when it resists easy methods. Manual mode deliberately reintroduces friction. To write without an AI offering to finish our sentences, to solve a problem without immediately searching the internet. Not denying the existence of the smoother path, simply declining to follow it reflexively. That resistance sharpens the edge of thought. In his autobiographical work, Nietzsche recounts that all of Thus Spoke Zarathustra was conceived during vigorous hikes along the magnificent road to Zawagli and around the Bay of Santa Margarita. He describes it as being conceived in the course of strenuous hiking, absolute certainty, as if every sentence were being called out to me. Nietzsche didn't have a podcast in his ear or a screen in his hand. The pace of walking, the rhythm of footsteps, the necessity of physical movement created a different texture of thought. Manual mode is seeking that texture across every domain. Fans of automation claim it empowers us. And it does, to a degree. But it also infantilizes. When every decision is assisted, when every choice is nudged, when every blank space is filled in advance, I can't help wondering what remains of the agentic self. How long before we forget how to drive without lane assist, how to spell without autocorrect, how to choose music without a recommendation engine? Maybe it's already too late. The philosopher Ivan Illich warned of what he called radical monopolies, systems that so dominate a domain of life that alternatives become unthinkable. Cars created conditions in which walking or cycling ceased to be viable modes of transport in almost all of our cities. Education systems created conditions in which learning without school became damn near unimaginable, and digital platforms are producing the same effect. Thinking without an algorithm is starting to feel like a lost art. Manual mode is an antidote to that anxiety. There are practices that remain stubbornly within our grasp, writing longhand, making maps, memorizing poetry, repairing broken objects. None of these need permission or advanced machinery. They are stubbornly human-scale acts. And they remind us that we aren't passive, helpless users of systems. We are their builders. We are their custodians. We, to quote Wonka, are the dreamers of dreams. Aristotle distinguished between scientific knowledge, craft knowledge, and practical wisdom. The danger of a purely automated intellectual environment is that it tends to collapse knowledge into scientific knowledge alone. Facts delivered, information stored, data. But craft and wisdom only emerge through doing. And manual mode insists on that doing. Reading slowly, annotating, reconstructing an argument in your own words, these aren't efficient practices. But inefficiency is almost the crucible of understanding. As a carpenter learns wood by shaping it, a potter learns clay by turning it, and the student of ideas learns an idea by struggling with it. The cultural appetite for manual mode has been growing for years. The resurgence of vinyl records, the popularity of bullet journals, the craft coffee movement, the renewed interest in the game of chess, and they all point to a desire for a slower, more tactile way of working, playing, and living. It's a way of resisting the accelerationist tempo of the modern world. To garden, to cook from scratch, to build furniture, to walk instead of driving. And all of these are ways of reclaiming time from the logic of productivity. They're an echo of Thoreau's decision to live at Walden Pond. Illich distinguished between convivial tools that serve individuals and communities, and counterproductive tools that ultimately enslave their users. He argued that a tool is convivial when it enhances autonomy and creativity without overwhelming. A convivial tool is useless without active engagement. It doesn't work for the passive. The fountain pen is convivial because it requires the hand's involvement. A mechanical watch is convivial because it requires winding, care, and attention. Even within digital life, certain tools invite engagement. Choosing, sometimes, to code from scratch instead of just using cursor, or editing a podcast with raw waveforms instead of AI-driven filters. If every act of creation becomes an act of delegation, the creator risks becoming a spectator to their own work, because sometimes the longer path is the true path. In E.M. Forster's short story The Machine Stops from 1909, society lives underground, dependent on a vast machine that provides for every need. When the machine falters, the society collapses, unable to remember how to live without it. Forster's prescience is almost scary because doesn't that sound familiar? Tech has always bent towards speed, efficiency, and ease, and that arc won't bend backward. But in all of this acceleration, the human in us will still crave resistance, struggle, and the satisfaction of labor that can't be outsourced. The future has to include us. We can't be passive riders on a conveyor belt of convenience. We have to be active participants, shaping our own experiences. To write slowly, to think with difficulty, to build with our own hands. We can't let these acts become wholly obsolete. The next creative and knowledge movement will be defined by whether we retain the will to use our tools manually, deliberately, stubbornly, or whether we let the tools use us. The monks knew it, the craftsmen knew it, and perhaps we're ready to know it all over again.